Hello, and welcome back to our LinkedIn Live conversations about living real. I just want to acknowledge that I'm thrilled that you're dialing in. I know it's summertime and there's so many moving parts and a lot of different adventures happening. And living real is something that happens 365 days a year, unless it's leap year. And then it happens even more. And we're really excited to share just what we're hearing back in the world from different folks as they're reading LinkedIn Live. And I'll actually start with a kind of fun story, Candace. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I walked into my beloved Breathe yoga studio yesterday at 5:15 in the morning. And the founder was there. She lives in Chile, but she was back and she was there and she squealed with delight. She just said, I just finished listening to the book for the second time. And I was just gobsmacked. I was so humbled. I was so excited. I was so moved that it had been such a key learning experience for her that she had listened to it twice. So I'm hoping other people are enjoying it. And I'm excited to dive into this LinkedIn Live conversation with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody so far that we've heard from has just said that they didn't really know how to look at things in this way and to be able to have these harder conversations, even with themselves, and just learning how to move through things at a normal pace and not have to add so much pressure, which kind of goes into what we're talking about today, which is that myth that we've come through about how there's this work-life balance. Like, it's the end of the summer. Like you just said, there's so many things going on and everybody's trying to find their rhythm and their balance again. But you've really spun this and you're like, forget balance. Like, we don't need to try to find work-life balance. We need to learn how to integrate. And so I wanted to start by asking you, like, where do you think the myth of this balance even comes from? And in what ways is that pursuit of balance causing us more stress?
Such a good question. I think it is an illusion that you can have work-life balance. I think life happens in fits and spurts. And I think so where does it come from? I go back to, I think it was Peter Vale talked about like going to work was like going to row crew. You know, you showed up at 9, you got in your boat, you faced backwards, you worked hard, you just rowed all day. And then at 5, you got up and you left and you went back into the rest of your life. And I'm not exactly sure when that started, that analogy started, but then I started to think that life is actually more like canoeing. You got to be facing forward, seeing what's coming. You often have a partner along the way. But then I started thinking it's a little bit more like whitewater rafting, right? Where you're like moving and shaking and like life is happening faster and faster. And then I realized it's like kayaking, whitewater kayaking, where you have to be alert, you have to build yourself, you have to grow your skills to be able to adapt and respond. And so I think that illusion of work-life balance was like that people are on flat water, but life is turbulent and fast-paced and connected and varied. And I think it's illusory to think you can leave yourself at the door and just be at the work mode versus holding all parts of yourself going forward.
Yeah. Well, and you write about shallowing in the book. And the reason why I'm trying to tie this in is that often we're trying to seek this balance, and in shallowing, you talk about how when we don't experience this, we don't experience this. And sometimes we feel like the illusion of trying to find that balance is almost similar in that we're not really paying attention to either things. And so, can you kind of dive in just a little bit on shallowing in this case, and then we can really tie it back into integration?
Great. So one of the key ideas in Living Real is that life is like a sine wave. There's highs and there's lows and there's highs and there's lows. And it's not necessarily predictable. Sometimes it's like low, 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 high. But that living real is experiencing the highs and the lows. And so the analogy we present to folks is that too often as a culture, we have learned to put hard things in a box and put it in our metaphoric basement, being like, that happened, that was hard, I'm going to put it in the basement, I'll deal with it later. And then that happens, that was hard, I'll put it in the basement, deal with it later. Suddenly our basement gets very, very full. But what we don't realize, or the illusion we've bought into, is that we're putting hard things in the basement and we're moving forward, What's actually happening is every time you put a box into the basement of hard stuff you aren't going to feel, you put a box onto the second floor of your house, which is where you feel joy and delight and fulfillment and engagement. And so pretty soon I'm seeing time and again, people are only living on the first floor of their house. So they're shallowing their existence. They're not having the joy and delight, but they're also not having the sadness and the hardship. And short term, that can be functional. Short term, that can be resilient. But over time, what we're seeing is when you don't have that joy, you don't have that fulfillment, you're at greater risk of burnout, loneliness, disconnection. I think you're at a greater risk of depression and anxiety because you lose your ability, you shallow your ability to navigate hard things. And so the illusion of work-life balance is again this illusion that I can put something away and I can work really hard during the day and close it off at the end. We are living, breathing humans that life happens. Like life, it's not like your kid's going to be like, oh, it's 5 o'clock, I can throw up now. Like my mom's going to be available to help me, right? Like it's not how it works. And I think this illusion, like it's what's been bred on social media. It's been what's like how people can poise and present a side of themselves. And I think it goes into that idea that if I have enough money, if I have enough, what was it, fame, wealth, and power, that the former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy said was like, that'll be happiness. Well, we know that's not true. That's another illusion that we're shattering. And by actually saying, okay, life doesn't happen in a balanced way, we then give ourselves permission to think about life as like sprinting rather than a marathon. Okay, I'm gonna sprint in this moment, and then I'm gonna take space here. My kids are at sleepaway camp. I hope they're doing well. I love them. It's a funny pull through. My son actually got the stomach bug last year at sleepaway camp, so it's obviously front of mind for me. But while they're away, I'm sprinting on a lot of things. Like I've been sprinting on going to a lot of fitness classes, the yoga studio and so forth. I've been sprinting on catching up with friends. I've been sprinting on cleaning the house. I've been sprinting on a lot of work, knowing that when they come back, I want to be fully present for them. And I might take less time on all of those. And so I think that's the real model of kind of where we're going, if that resonates.
Yeah, I love that you just pulled that together, because that was like the next question is, what does it look like in practice to integrate our lives? Because again, it's not that we're saying you can't, turn off the brain from work mode at 5 p.m., but it is about like you have these things that are constantly going on in the middle of the day. And so when you're talking about integration, how does that look like in everyday practice for people? And you gave a great example.
This is where a lot of the leadership tools and practices and resources that we engage our clients, whether it's on the deep dive or the asynchronous learning or the one-on-one coaching. But the example that comes to mind is altitude. We introduce people to this concept of altitude, about how you have to get up at 30, 40, 50,000 feet and get perspective of where are you in your life? What is it that matters? What are the priorities? How do you start to navigate going forward? Another very real example is I've been getting altitude because it's my husband's birthday on Saturday, and we are going to be pulling back and we're going to be taking a little time off. And so I'm like, okay, at altitude, what has to happen? What has to happen while I'm in Cambridge? What can happen while I'm on the road? And thinking about that. And I think it's building our muscles as leaders, our capacity to really think differently. Again, both thinking about time differently, thinking about perspective differently, that actually helps us open to see this.
Yeah, you're really good at knowing how to pull up and see those, like the bigger picture and then even the finer details. Like it inspires me all the time, because I'm like, wow, you just like naturally know how to do it. And when did all of this really click for you? Because you apply a lot of the tools in your own everyday practice. And so when did this all start to make sense between altitude and even the integration point? Because you're a very busy professional and you have a lot that you balance, whether anybody knows it or not. Like you literally have a lot that you balance. And how do you do it? Like, how do you actually do it?
Well, first of all, thank you. That's very humbling. And sometimes I'm glad it looks actually living real. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's sloppy. Sometimes it's a 3 a.m. wake up. Like it comes in a lot of different shapes and forms. Um, and I think of this is living real is not like I read the book, I check the box, I move forward. It's a way of engaging. It's a way of thinking about living differently. And so, yes, I came up with this idea of altitude and I've been teaching it and I'm actively trying to practice it. And I'm actively saying, okay, what are the tools and resources that I need and that might indicate what other people need? And so, an example is uh, tension creates consciousness. We believe that, like, when you can sit and hold complex things, hard things, complicated things that make you feel uncomfortable and tense, if you can hold it, you can actually open to next level of thinking, a new level of consciousness. Never have we been in a time when we've needed to be able to hold complexity and hold tension to be able to get to the next side. That's another example of an illusion. People are like, if I was good enough, if I was fast enough, if I was productive enough, if I was efficient enough, I would be able to da 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 da. Actually, maybe. And if you do, you should sell it because, like, I know there's a lot of people that would want that. And I think it's about holding the tension, right? Like, there will always be tension. And how do we shatter the myth or misperception and lean into that?
Mm-hmm. Well, and even like what you were just saying and alluding to, you're like being real. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's the 3 a.m. And those are the things that we're really trying to bring out more and more is that, the reels life, the highlight reels aren't reality. And it's okay if we have a little bit of busyness here because we want to be less busy over here. But it's like having those conversations about it so we can start to normalize what actual life looks like. Um, and
And the
you
choices
know,
that you have to make. Like, you just moved across country. There was choices, right? And there was like transitions and like there was realities of like this is going to be a week where we do this type of work, not this type of work. And like that's life. If people and the thing that gets me so excited, Candace, is that once you shatter the illusion that it's going to fit in these boxes, it's going to fit from 9 to 5, it's going to look like this. Once you can step beyond it, it's like the whole world opens up of new possibilities and new ways of engaging and new ways of reeling. It's like, I think it's transformational. We're hearing from a lot of folks that it's eye-opening, not necessarily
yeah,
easy, but eye-opening.
yeah. This was not in our plan, but I would love to hear a little bit more. And I think it would be beneficial for others to hear just some of those stories that we've been hearing from people about how they're taking this information in, but then they're starting to apply and see it in their life.
Yeah. There's one person who said, gosh, I've like I'm only in chapter 3, Camille, but I see how my marriage is shallowed. And like I got into therapy, but what I really need is to get into real. And like that was heartwarming. And and also um left me really grateful that people read when they're reading the book, they're able to filter it through what's most important for them and what's most resonant for them. There's another person who I have deep admiration for who is really led a life of service in public service in the government, and her career has basically the current administration has basically unwound kind of what she has done over the course of her life. And she's like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to make meaning of all the sacrifices I made to my family and then what's happening. And she said, I've just surrendered into the book. I've opened to the book, and the book is becoming a ballast for me to think, okay, what is the next chapter? And she said, it's actually giving me permission to not jump into action right now, I'm going to take maybe a year and I'm going to spend time thinking about, okay, what is my greatest gift? What is it that enlivens me, not activates me? And what is it that I want to have as an impact? So we're hearing really exciting things. And I'm like, as people are listening to it and reading it, I would love to hear what's activated for you all or enlivening you all.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many great concepts within the book, and they all come together. And I love how you just mentioned that it's really about the reader's journey. You know, the person, you can come in, and because we're all dealing with something and we're all going through a transition of some kind. And so to be able to, again, have that permission to walk through the journey and to see things from a different perspective, I think is so powerful. And it's why the book has offered just a unique transformation, really, for so many different people in so many different places. They, you know, whether you're going through a relationship transition, a career transition, the administration, whatever it is, this book is just opening that doorway to have those real conversations. And it's one of the reasons why we are starting to put out there about hosting the Reeling dinners, where you can come together and really have and share that community, where it's not, again, like you said, it's not checking the box. You're not coming to be awkward. You're really coming to sit down and gather and talk about these things in a way that's productive, in a way that's, you know, because we can all vent and rant and do the things, but when we're actually holding space for the conversation, it's such a different shift for us, because we're then seeing the potential. Somebody at this dinner might have a solution or just a way of looking at things differently. And it's like, we can truly start to create more community through these shared experiences. And I think that's why it's been such an honor to get to be on the project, is to see the impact it's already making. And I just can't wait to see it continue to unfold over the next several months. It really, yeah, warms my heart.
It's humbling. I love how you're framing that, because I think we are all craving genuine connections. And I think, just to reiterate what I think I heard in your message, is you don't need to read the book to live more real. Like, obviously that's a gateway, and we're seeing people pulling together these events. I have 2 in San Francisco next week that I'm really, really excited about, and we'll be doing a lot more in starting in September, for different cities where people are ready. We're ready to live more real.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and is there anything about integration or living real that you hope people really gather from either reading the book or even seeing these different lives that we're doing,
Mhm.
that will help them carry it forward? Like, if you could give them one piece of wisdom that would just help them see their way through it, what would it be?
I think it's a great question, and what's coming up in this moment is self-gentleness and permission. And
Mhm.
I think there's what I'm noticing sometimes is a tension. Like, I want to read the book, I want to open to this. Like, my life is already really complex right now. Can I add one more thing? And so I'm seeing this tension, and I want to honor and recognize, like, that's great awareness. And it could be just as simple as stopping or stilling, or giving yourself permission to listen inward to yourself. I'm seeing in myself, when life gets busy, that I find an easier time stepping back, reeling, by getting into nature, moving away from the busyness of life. And there's something about nature. It's such a simple word, but like, that is really enlivening. I was running along, Candace and I shared the love of running, and I was running along the river this morning, and I was just struck by um, how much the sun changed the temperature. And so I was like, oh, I got to run in the shade. I'm a northerner, but I was struck, and just that little enlivenment of, like, the power of Mother Nature was really transformative, to be able to settle, to still, and ultimately to listen inward. Um, and so if I were to pull that thread through, I think we all have inner knowledge and inner wisdom about the illusions that we are living with, whether they were intentional or not, and permission to sit with and question and choose
Yeah,
what is
yeah.
path.
Well, and that, kind of comes, brings everything to an end for today, of just really trying to spread the message that, as we head into this next season, how can you really set yourself up to integrate back into life if you've been, doing all the things, and giving yourself that grace and ease in which to do so. Because, like you said, sometimes when we talk about these topics of looking at ourselves and looking inward, it's intimidating because if you haven't done it in forever, you're like, yeah, I don't want to see it. I'm not trying to see it. But once you do, you start to really open yourself to the next layer of potential in your life and your relationships. And that's one of the biggest things that we hope that, if you're able to read the book, I listened to it because I mean, even though we were on the project, it's a great book to listen to. And it's again that permission to come back and allow things to be easy. And so we're hopeful that these conversations will really spark interest. And if you are interested in learning more about how to bring this to your either organization, your team, your family,
Your
like,
community, yeah, your girlfriends, your colleagues, your dinner
yeah,
party.
at your dinner party, let us know because we have a ton of resources here to support that journey. And we're really hopeful that, again, it will create meaningful conversations over the next several months. So,
Absolutely, and it's perfect timing as you reintegrate and plan for the fall, how you're gonna live more real. Thank you all for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you next week, and we look forward to your thoughts, reactions, and questions. We're excited to collaborate with you on this.